Hello, guys. Tonight we are talking about life inside the tombs of the pharaohs. Part 1. The eternal houses of the pharaohs. The tombs of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs were not mere burial places, they were gateways to eternity. Elaborate spiritual machines built to ensure that the king would live forever in the afterlife. To the Egyptians, a tomb was known as the house of eternity because it was designed to last for all time. Every brick, painting, and inscription within it had a purpose: to protect the body, nourish the soul, and secure the divine rebirth of the ruler. When we speak of life inside the tombs of the pharaohs, we are talking about a world of rituals, art, and magic, all meticulously crafted to prepare for a journey beyond death. It was a place where artisans and priests worked for years, sometimes decades, to create a sacred resting place that could carry the spirit of the king to the realm of the gods. The pharaoh and the afterlife belief to the ancient Egyptians, death was not an end but a transition. The pharaoh, seen as both god and king, was believed to ascend to the afterlife to live among the deities. His soul or ka needed a body and offerings to continue its existence. This belief led to the construction of some of the most extraordinary monuments in human history, from the early mastabas and step pyramids to the grand pyramids of Giza and the richly decorated rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings. These tombs were carefully planned to include everything a king would need in the next world: food, clothing, furniture, jewelry, and even servants. The first tombs, mastabas, and early experiments, the earliest royal tombs, dating back to the first and second dynasties, were rectangular mud brick structures known as mastabas. These flat-roofed buildings featured underground chambers where the king's body was buried, while the rooms above stored offerings and ritual items. Over time, the architects of Egypt sought ways to build more monumental and durable structures. This experimentation led to the reign of King Djoser and his step pyramid at Saqqara, designed by the legendary architect Imhotep. The step pyramid was not just a tomb, but a spiritual staircase, symbolizing the king's ascent to the heavens. The Pyramid Age, a monument to eternity by the Fourth Dynasty, Egyptian kings had perfected the art of pyramid building. The Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza stands as a testament to this ambition. Towering nearly 150 meters and built with over 2.3 million limestone blocks. Inside the pyramid, the king's burial chamber was hidden deep within, accessed through narrow passageways. The walls were initially plain but grew more ornate over time as the Egyptians realized that texts and carvings could serve magical purposes. By the 5th and 6th dynasties, pyramid texts, spells, and hymns meant to guide the pharaoh in the afterlife were inscribed on the inner walls. Life inside these pyramid tombs was not about human habitation, but about spiritual life, a carefully arranged sequence of rooms, shafts, and false passages designed to confuse tomb robbers and protect the king's remains. The Valley of the Kings, a new era of tombs by the new kingdom. Pyramid building had ceased. Pharaohs like Thutmose I, Amenhotep III, and Ramesses II were buried in a hidden necropolis on the west bank of the Nile near Thebes, known today as the Valley of the Kings. These tombs were carved directly into the limestone cliffs. Inside, they featured long corridors, pillared halls, and richly decorated chambers, all leading to the king's sarcophagus. Every surface of these tombs was alive with color and meaning. Scenes from the Book of the Dead, the Book of Gates, and the Book of Amduat filled the walls, depicting the pharaoh's journey through the night and his rebirth at dawn. Artisans of the afterlife, the village of Deir el-Medina, the tombs of the pharaohs were built by skilled teams of artisans. Architects, stonemasons, and laborers who lived in a special village called Deir el-Medina. These workers were highly respected and well compensated because their task was considered sacred. They were preparing the pharaoh's eternal home. Life for these workers was rigorous. They worked long hours carving, painting, and inscribing hieroglyphs. Many of their personal writings, preserved on ostraca, tell us about their lives, their families, disputes, and religious devotion. Interestingly, they also left graffiti inside tombs, sometimes signing their work with pride. Symbolism and decoration inside the tombs. The walls of a royal tomb were not meant to be mere decoration. They were filled with powerful magic spells, mythological scenes, and depictions of gods and guardians. For example, the ceiling often represented the night sky filled with stars to symbolize the pharaoh's journey across the heavens. The walls showed the pharaoh interacting with deities like Osiris, god of the afterlife, and Ra, the sun god. Protective symbols like the Ankh and the Jed pillar were painted or carved to ensure eternal safety. Objects buried with the king, such as chariots, thrones, weapons, and musical instruments, were intended to serve him in the afterlife. Rituals and the opening of the mouth. Before a tomb could be sealed, an elaborate set of funerary rituals was performed. The most important of these was the opening of the mouth ceremony, during which priests symbolically restored the deceased pharaoh's ability to see, speak, and eat in the afterlife. Offerings of food, wine, incense, and prayers were placed inside the tomb to nourish the king's ka. Sealing the tomb. Once the burial was complete, the tomb was sealed, and the entrance often concealed to deter robbers. However, the wealth inside these tombs, gold, jewelry, and precious artifacts, made them irresistible targets. Many pharaonic tombs were looted in antiquity, but a few, like that of Tutankhamun, survived largely intact, providing modern historians with a rare glimpse of the splendor of ancient Egyptian burial customs. Part 2. The Builders of Eternity, Crafting the Pharaoh's Afterlife. Behind every grand tomb in ancient Egypt stood an army of artisans, engineers, and laborers who worked tirelessly to fulfill the sacred task of preparing a king's eternal resting place. These men, and sometimes women, were not merely construction workers. They were creators of a divine vessel, builders of a bridge between the mortal world and eternity. The story of life inside the tombs of the pharaohs cannot be told without understanding the lives of those who built them. The sacred workforce, Deir el-Medina, in the desert hills west of the Nile, near modern Luxor, lay a walled village known as Deir el-Medina. Founded in the early 18th dynasty, this settlement was home to the highly skilled workers who built the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. The villagers of Deir el-Medina were considered elite craftsmen. Unlike ordinary laborers who toiled on state projects or in agriculture, these artisans were provided with regular rations of grain, beer, meat, and oil. They were literate, and many of them could read and write, a rare skill in ancient Egypt. They kept detailed records of their daily lives on ostraca and papyrus, which have survived to this day and provide an extraordinary window into their world. Roles and specializations. Building a pharaoh's tomb required a variety of specialized skills. Architects and engineers designed the tomb's layout, ensuring that the passageways and chambers were aligned with astronomical and symbolic principles. Stonecutters and masons carved the tomb from the limestone cliffs, often working by torchlight in dark, narrow corridors. Sculptors and painters decorated the walls with vivid scenes from the Book of the Dead and other sacred texts. Scribes recorded the work, kept accounts of rations, and wrote down the spells and inscriptions that would protect the pharaoh in the afterlife. Priests oversaw the religious aspects of tomb construction, ensuring that every symbol and figure was ritually correct. Tools and techniques. The tools used by the builders of the pharaohs were simple yet effective. Copper and bronze chisels, wooden mallets, flint blades, and stone hammers were standard. For larger tasks, workers employed levers, ropes, and sledges to move heavy stones. To decorate the walls, artists first sketched scenes in red ochre, which were then corrected by a master draftsman in black. Sculptors carved the outlines into the walls, and painters filled them with rich colors made from ground minerals: red ochre for skin tones and energy, blue and green for water and vegetation, often made from crushed malachite or azurite, yellow for gold, symbolizing divinity, black for fertility and rebirth, derived from carbon or burnt wood. These vivid colors have survived thousands of years, a testament to their skill and craftsmanship. The daily life of a tomb worker, life in Deir el-Medina, was structured around a rigid schedule. Workers typically labored 8 days on and 2 days off, spending their rest periods with their families. They lived in small, rectangular mud brick houses with 2 or 3 rooms, often decorated with simple wall paintings and equipped with basic furniture like wooden stools and reed mats. Each day, workers walked up the steep paths to the Valley of the Kings, carrying their tools and supplies. Inside the tombs, they carved passages by lamplight, enduring the heat and the ever-present dust. Despite the hardships, their writings reveal moments of camaraderie, humor, and even rebellion. Strikes were recorded when rations were late or insufficient, making them some of the earliest labor disputes in history. Women of Deir el-Medina, while the majority of tomb builders were men, women played important roles in the village. They managed households, wove textiles, brewed beer, and sometimes acted as priestesses or healers. Records show that women could own property, inherit wealth, and even engage in legal disputes. In times of crisis, such as during a strike, women often supported the workers by bringing them food and water. Religious duty and the work of artisans. For the artisans, their work was not just a job, but a sacred duty. Every carving and painting held spiritual significance. They believed that by creating these images, they were giving life to the pharaohs caught in the afterlife. The walls were not merely decorated. They were brought to life through the power of words, symbols, and images. Before beginning work on a tomb, rituals were performed to dedicate the site to the gods. Offerings of food and incense were made to deities like Ptah and Hathor, seeking their blessing for the project. The tomb layout, royal tombs of the New Kingdom, followed a general pattern: a long, descending corridor leading into the heart of the mountain, side chambers for offerings and treasures, a large burial chamber where the sarcophagus of the pharaoh was placed. The walls were filled with texts like the Book of Amduat, which described the pharaoh's journey through the 12 hours of the night, battling chaos and darkness before being reborn at dawn. The alignment of the tomb often had astronomical significance. Some tombs were oriented to capture the first rays of the rising sun, symbolizing the pharaoh's resurrection alongside the sun god Ra. Challenges and dangers. Working inside a royal tomb was not without risk. The narrow tunnels could collapse, and the lack of ventilation made breathing difficult. The use of oil lamps created soot and heat, while the tools themselves caused injuries. Snakes and scorpions were a constant danger in the desert landscape. Moreover, secrecy was essential. The wealth inside these tombs attracted robbers even in ancient times, so workers were sworn to silence. Some tombs included false doors, hidden chambers, and intricate traps to deter looters. The burial goods. Preparing for eternity, one of the most striking features of a pharaoh's tomb was the wealth of burial goods it contained. These included jewelry and amulets believed to have magical properties, chariots, weapons, and tools for use in the afterlife, furniture, clothing, and cosmetics to maintain royal comfort, food and drink offerings, often placed in sealed jars, Shabti figurines, small statues that would magically serve the pharaoh as laborers in the afterlife. Every object had a purpose. It was there to ensure the pharaoh's safe journey and eternal existence. After years of work, the closing rituals. When the tomb was completed and the burial day arrived, the artisan's work culminated in elaborate ceremonies. Priests performed the opening of the mouth ritual on the mummy, symbolically awakening the senses of the dead king. Offerings of bread, beer, and incense were made, while hymns and prayers invoked the protection of the gods. Once the sarcophagus was placed in the burial chamber and all offerings were arranged, the tomb was sealed forever, or so it was intended. For the workers of Dar el-Medina, their task was complete, but the pharaoh's journey had just begun. Part 3. The sacred symbolism of the tombs. Stepping into the tomb of a pharaoh is like entering a sacred book carved in stone and painted in color. Every line, every image, and every symbol on the walls carried deep meaning, all designed to ensure the safe passage of the king's soul into the afterlife. To the ancient Egyptians, the tomb was not just a burial chamber, it was a cosmic map, a magical portal that connected the world of the living with the realm of the gods. The tomb as a microcosm of the universe, the Egyptians saw the tomb as a miniature universe. Its structure mirrored the creation story, with the burial chamber representing the primeval mound from which life first arose. The ceiling often depicted the night sky, painted deep blue and covered with golden stars, symbolizing the heavens. The walls were adorned with scenes of rivers, fields, and deities, transforming the tomb into a replica of the afterlife. The pharaoh's sarcophagus was placed at the heart of this universe, symbolizing the union of the king with Osiris, the god of the dead. By lying within the tomb, the king was both dead and alive, merging with the cosmic forces that govern the universe. The Book of the Dead, one of the most famous texts inscribed in the tombs of the New Kingdom, was the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells, prayers, and illustrations meant to guide the deceased through the dangers of the afterlife. Originally known as the Book of Coming Forth by Day, this text was not a single book, but a compilation of magical formulas used over centuries. Some key purposes of the Book of the Dead included providing the pharaoh with the correct words to pass through gates guarded by demons, teaching the soul how to navigate the dangers of the underworld, helping the deceased face judgment before Osiris in the weighing of the heart ceremony, where the heart was weighed against the feather of might. Other sacred texts, in addition to the Book of the Dead, pharaohs often adorned their tombs with texts such as the Amduat, a detailed map of the sun god Ra's nightly journey through the underworld, divided into 12 hours. The Book of Gates, descriptions of the gates that the soul must pass through, each guarded by fearsome deities and serpents. The Litany of Ra, hymns to the sun god, affirming the king's transformation into a divine being. These texts were not merely decorative. They were believed to be living words, imbued with magical power. By inscribing them on the walls, priests ensured that the pharaoh's soul could read them and use them as tools during his journey. The iconography of the tombs, the art inside the tombs of the pharaohs, is rich with symbolism. The walls often feature gods and goddesses. Figures like Osiris, Isis, Horus, Hathor, and Ra appear frequently, offering protection or guidance. The solar journey, depictions of the sun's daily cycle, showing the soul's rebirth alongside the sunrise. Offerings, scenes of servants presenting food, drink, and treasures to the king, ensuring that his Kai would never go hungry. Mythological creatures, serpents, crocodiles, and hybrid beings represent both the dangers and protectors of the afterlife. Sacred colors, every color carried meaning. Gold symbolized divinity, green represented fertility and rebirth, and red was linked to power and energy. Magic in the tomb. To the ancient Egyptians, writing itself was magical. Hieroglyphs were not just letters, they were living symbols, each imbued with divine power. This belief led tomb artists to sometimes disarm dangerous figures, like snakes or scorpions, by breaking the image or leaving parts of it incomplete, preventing the creature from coming to life. Amulets and protective charms were also placed inside the tomb. These included scarabs, eye amulets, and the jet pillar. Each object was a spell in physical form, safeguarding the king's body and soul. The journey through the afterlife, the tomb was designed to act as a spiritual guidebook. As the soul left the body, it would travel through the corridors and chambers of the tomb, mirroring its passage through the underworld. Each chamber represented a different stage of the journey: the Hall of Judgment, where the heart was weighed; the Field of Reeds, a paradise where the king would live in eternal peace; the Solar Boat, carrying the soul across the sky with Ra. The belief in the afterlife was so strong that tombs included all the tools and instructions the king might need to navigate these stages. The role of priests in activating the tomb. After the tomb was completed, priests performed elaborate ceremonies to activate its spiritual power. They read aloud the texts on the walls, recited hymns, and performed rituals to ensure that the images and spells would come alive when needed. The opening of the mouth ceremony, conducted on the mummy, was especially crucial. It allowed the deceased king to breathe, see, and speak in the next world. The pharaoh is a god. In death, the pharaoh was believed to become one with Osiris, the ruler of the underworld, and also to rise as a companion of Ra, the sun god. The tomb was therefore both a palace and a temple, reflecting the king's divine transformation. Every object, from the golden death mask to the smallest jar of honey, was placed with this transformation in mind. The tomb was a sacred workshop of immortality, a space where divine rebirth was carefully engineered through magic, art, and ritual. The legacy of symbolic art. The symbolic decorations inside these tombs are not only windows into ancient Egyptian beliefs, but also a testament to their extraordinary artistic vision. The scenes are alive with movement and meaning, capturing a world where life and death, gods and humans, were closely intertwined. Even today, when modern archaeologists step inside these tombs, the art seems to pulse with energy, as if the walls themselves are still whispering the prayers of the ancient priests. Part 4. Treasures for Eternity. What pharaohs took to the afterlife. When we imagine the tombs of ancient Egypt, we often think of glittering treasures, golden masks, jeweled amulets, and elaborate furniture. While this image is true for certain royal burials, the purpose of these treasures was far more profound than mere wealth or display. Every object placed within the tomb was carefully chosen for its symbolic power and practical role in ensuring the pharaoh's rebirth and eternal comfort. The philosophy behind burial goods. Ancient Egyptians believed that the afterlife was a continuation of earthly life. The pharaoh would still need food, clothing, tools, and entertainment, just as he did during his reign. Tomb goods were therefore essential provisions for eternity, intended to serve the king's Ka and Ba in the world beyond. Priests and artisans worked together to select, create, and consecrate these items. Many were inscribed with spells from the Book of the Dead, designed to protect the king or imbue the object with magical powers. The golden death mask and sarcophagus. Among the most iconic symbols of ancient Egypt is the golden death mask. The Mask of Tutankhamun, discovered by Howard Carter in 1922, is perhaps the most famous. Made of solid gold and inlaid with lapis lazuli, turquoise, and carnelian, it was designed not only to protect the king's face, but also to transform him into a divine being. The sarcophagus, often made of granite, quartzite, or gilded wood, was the king's final resting vessel. In many cases, multiple nested coffins were used, each richly decorated with inscriptions of protection. The outermost sarcophagus symbolized the cosmic womb from which the king would be reborn. Jewelry and amulets. Jewelry in a pharaoh's tomb was not only decorative, but deeply symbolic. Amulets shaped like scarabs, the Eye of Horus, or the Ankh were believed to offer protection and divine power. Each amulet had a specific function. Scarab amulets represented rebirth and the rising sun. The Eye of Horus symbolized healing and protection. The Ankh was the symbol of life itself. These pieces were often made of gold, a material associated with the flesh of the gods, or electrum, thought to shine like the sun. Weapons and chariots, pharaohs were seen as warrior kings, and many tombs included weapons, daggers, bows, and quivers to symbolize their ability to protect themselves and their kingdom even in the afterlife. Chariots, disassembled for burial, were also found in some tombs, particularly in those of the New Kingdom. These were both practical items and symbols of royal power. Furniture and comforts. The tomb of Tutankhamun revealed an astonishing array of furniture: thrones, beds, stools, and chests, all decorated with exquisite craftsmanship. These objects were meant to provide the pharaoh with all the comforts of home and the field of reeds. Beds were often shaped like sacred animals, such as lions or cows, while thrones were adorned with scenes of the king and his queen, surrounded by protective deities. Food and drink. The pharaoh's ka required nourishment, so food offerings were a vital part of the burial. Sealed jars of grain, wine, honey, dried meats, and even loaves of bread were placed inside the tomb. In some cases, entire meals were prepared and mummified. Clay and wooden models of servants carrying food or brewing beer were also included. These figurines were believed to magically come to life and prepare sustenance for the king. Games and entertainment. The Egyptians valued leisure and entertainment, and they believed these pleasures would continue in the afterlife. One of the most popular games, Senet, was often placed in the tomb. This board game, which symbolized the journey of the soul, had spiritual significance as well. It was thought to teach the king how to navigate the challenges of the afterlife. Canopic jars and ritual items. A set of 4 canopic jars was placed near the sarcophagus to hold the king's mummified internal organs. Each jar was protected by one of the 4 sons of Horus and covered with a lid shaped like the head of a deity. Imsidi guarded the liver. Hapi protected the lungs. Duamutef watched over the stomach. Kebisanuf guarded the intestines. Ritual tools, such as incense burners, ceremonial knives, and vessels for offerings, were also buried in the tomb to allow ongoing religious rites in the afterlife. Shapti figurines, the servants of the afterlife. Perhaps the most curious objects found in royal tombs are the Shapti figurines. These small statues, often numbering in the hundreds, were inscribed with spells commanding them to perform manual labor on behalf of the king in the next world. They were made of wood, stone, or faience, and were often painted to resemble the pharaoh himself or generic workers holding tools. Magical and ceremonial items. Certain objects were purely magical in nature, designed to protect the pharaoh from harm. Knives made of flint or ivory were used in protective rituals, while figurines of gods acted as guardians. Some tombs contained papyrus scrolls with spells for warding off evil spirits or defeating hostile creatures in the underworld. Treasures as political power. The vast wealth found in royal tombs also reflected the political power of the pharaoh. By showcasing gold, silver, and gemstones from across the empire, the tombs demonstrated Egypt's dominance over its neighbors. These treasures were not only gifts to the gods, but also symbols of the pharaoh's eternal authority. Tutankhamun's tomb, a glimpse of ancient wealth. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb gave modern historians an unparalleled look at the treasures of a New Kingdom burial. Although Tutankhamun was a relatively minor king who died young, his tomb contained a solid gold death mask, 3 nested coffins, a gilded throne decorated with scenes of intimacy between the king and his queen, chariots, weapons, and musical instruments, hundreds of Shapti figurines and ceremonial items. The wealth of this tomb suggests that the burials of great pharaohs like Ramesses II must have been far more opulent, though they were looted long ago. The fate of the treasures. Despite efforts to protect these goods, many royal tombs were looted in antiquity. The wealth of gold and jewels was irresistible to thieves, including corrupt officials who were supposed to guard the tombs. Some treasures were melted down, while others found their way into the hands of foreign rulers. What remains today, whether in museums or still hidden beneath the sands, tells only part of the story. The full splendor of these treasures, once shining by torchlight inside the tombs, is something we can only imagine. Part 5: Mummification and Burial Rituals, Preparing for Eternity. If the tomb was the pharaoh's eternal palace, then mummification was the process that prepared the king himself to become divine. For the ancient Egyptians, the preservation of the body was not optional. It was absolutely necessary for the soul's survival in the afterlife. Without a body, the cat and bat would be lost, unable to reunite for eternal life. The science and spirituality of mummification. Mummification was both a spiritual ritual and a technical process. The Egyptians believed that the body had to be preserved so that the deceased could recognize it in the next life. Over centuries, they perfected the art of embalming, developing techniques that remain astonishingly advanced for their time. The process typically took 70 days, a period symbolically tied to the cycle of the star Sirius. The stages of mummification: purification of the body. The body was first washed with palm wine and rinsed with water from the Nile, considered sacred. Priests chanted prayers during this cleansing to prepare the deceased for transformation. Removal of internal organs. The brain was carefully removed through the nostrils using metal hooks. The heart, liver, lungs, and stomach were removed via an incision on the left side of the body. These organs were embalmed separately and placed in canopic jars, each protected by one of the 4 sons of Horus. The heart, however, was often left in place or replaced with an amulet, as it was considered the seat of wisdom and emotion. Dehydration with natron. The body cavity was packed with natron to remove moisture. The exterior of the body was also covered with natron for about 40 days. This process preserved the flesh and prevented decay. Anointing and wrapping. Once the body was dried, it was anointed with oils and resins, which gave it a pleasant scent and added an extra layer of preservation. Priests placed amulets and charms within the wrappings, including the scarab of the heart, to protect the soul during judgment. The wrapping itself was an elaborate ritual, with hundreds of yards of linen strips used to cover every part of the body. Spells were recited at each stage, ensuring that the limbs and senses were restored for the afterlife. The death mask and final wrapping. For royalty, the final stage involved placing a golden mask over the face, symbolizing the divine radiance of the gods. The body was then placed in a series of coffins, often nested one inside the other, before being sealed within the sarcophagus. Priests and ritual specialists. The mummification process was overseen by priests, particularly one known as the Sem priest, who wore a mask of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming. His role was to perform sacred rites, ensuring that the body would be acceptable to the gods. Other priests recited spells from the Book of the Dead, performed purification rites, and made offerings of incense, oils, and food during the embalming process. The opening of the mouth ceremony. One of the most important rituals in Egyptian funerary tradition was the opening of the mouth ceremony. This was performed on the mummy or a statue of the deceased to restore their senses in the afterlife, allowing them to see, hear, breathe, and eat again. The ritual involved touching the mouth and eyes with special tools, often shaped like a small adze, while priests recited spells. This symbolic act woke the pharaohs, Ke and Ba, ensuring they could function in the next world. The funeral procession. When the mummification process was complete, the body was transported to the tomb in a grand procession. Priests, family members, and mourners followed the royal chariot, carrying offerings of food, perfumes, and flowers. Women often acted as professional mourners, wailing and singing hymns to Isis and Nephthys, who were believed to mourn Osiris in a similar way. The journey from the embalming workshop to the tomb was a spiritual voyage. Along the way, priests performed purification rituals and made offerings at sacred points, such as the edge of the Nile or temple courtyards. Placing the body in the tomb inside the burial chamber, the mummy was placed within the sarcophagus, often a massive stone container weighing several tons. The walls of the chamber were already covered with protective texts and magical spells, ensuring that the tomb itself functioned like a machine for immortality. Offerings of food, drink, clothing, and personal possessions were arranged around the coffin. These items were not simply for display. They were believed to transform into usable, spiritual versions that the king could enjoy in the afterlife. The final sealing of the tomb. After all rituals were completed, the tomb was sealed, and its entrance was often concealed to prevent robbers from stealing the treasures. Workers filled the corridors with rubble, created false doors, or built hidden passageways. In some cases, curses were inscribed to warn potential thieves. Death will come on swift wings to him who disturbs this tomb. This final act marked the pharaoh's official transition to the realm of the gods. For the living, the tomb was now a sacred place of memory and worship, visited during annual festivals or special ceremonies. The sacred geography of the tomb. The Egyptians chose the locations of tombs with great care. In Thebes, the Valley of the Kings was seen as a sacred landscape. Its cliffs resembled the protective wings of the goddess Hathor, and its westward orientation aligned with the setting sun, symbolizing death and rebirth. The inner layout of the tomb mirrored the sun god Ra's nightly journey through the underworld, with the burial chamber acting as the final point of rebirth, where the king would rise again like the dawn. The mystery of royal burials. While we know much about the burial practices of the pharaohs, many questions remain. The tombs of some legendary kings, such as Rameses VIII or Cleopatra and Mark Antony, have yet to be discovered. Archaeologists continue to search the desert sands, hoping to uncover new tombs that might reveal untold secrets of the mummification process and the treasures of the afterlife. Part 6, Guardians of the Dead, Priests, Curses, and Magical Protections. Even after the body of the pharaoh was mummified and placed in its eternal resting place, the work of safeguarding the king's soul and treasures did not end. The Egyptians understood that a tomb was a gateway between two worlds, the living and the dead, and such a gateway required protection. Priests, magical spells, curses, and even architectural tricks were all part of this protective system, ensuring that no force, human or supernatural, could disturb the pharaoh's eternal rest. The role of priests in protecting tombs. Priests were the guardians of the tombs. Even after the burial was complete, they were responsible for maintaining rituals and offerings to sustain the king's care. These priests, known as ka-priests, visited the tomb regularly to recite prayers, present food offerings, and burn incense. Some priests were also tasked with performing protective magic. They invoked deities like Anubis and Thoth to watch over the tomb. Through chants and ceremonies, they believed they could strengthen the spiritual walls of the tomb against curses, demons, or vengeful spirits. Magical texts as protection. The walls of royal tombs were not simply adorned with art and religious texts. They were armored with spells. Passages from the Book of the Dead, Book of Gates, and Amduat were inscribed with the intention of warding off evil. Some of these spells included repelling snakes and scorpions that might harm the king's soul, guarding against demons of the underworld, sealing the tomb against robbers, both through magical warnings and practical deterrence. Hieroglyphs themselves were believed to hold power. Dangerous figures like snakes or crocodiles were sometimes drawn incomplete or struck through with lines, rendering them harmless in the spirit world. The famous curses of the pharaohs. While ancient Egyptian tomb curses have been popularized in modern culture, especially after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, there is some truth to the concept. Some tombs did include inscriptions meant to frighten intruders. Examples of such warnings include, "Death will come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king. The crocodile, the lion, and the serpent shall devour those who enter here uninvited." Whether these were meant as magical spells or psychological deterrents, they reflect the Egyptians' fear of tomb robbery, which was a very real threat even in antiquity. Architectural traps and tricks. In addition to magic, the Egyptians employed clever engineering to safeguard the tombs. Some examples include false doors and passages to confuse intruders, hidden chambers that concealed the true burial room, massive stone blocks designed to slide into place and seal corridors once the burial was complete. The builders of these tombs were sworn to secrecy. Yet, despite these measures, most royal tombs were eventually looted, often by those who knew their construction intimately, sometimes even members of the workforce or corrupt officials. Anubis, the protector of the dead. The god Anubis played a central role in protecting the deceased. Often depicted as a black jackal or a man with a jackal's head, Anubis was believed to guard tomb entrances and oversee embalming. Statues of Anubis were sometimes placed near the entrance of the burial chamber, as if standing sentinel over the pharaoh's resting place. Anubis was also responsible for the weighing of the heart ceremony, where the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Ma'at. His presence in tomb art was both protective and symbolic of righteous judgment. Spells of the coffin texts and pyramid texts before the Book of the Dead. Earlier tombs, particularly those of the Old Kingdom, were inscribed with the pyramid texts. These were spells carved directly into the stone walls of the burial chambers, serving as magical fortresses for the soul. During the Middle Kingdom, the coffin texts evolved, which were inscribed on wooden coffins rather than walls. Both sets of texts provided protection against evil spirits and instructed the soul on how to navigate the underworld safely. Animal guardians. Animals were also seen as protectors of the dead. Tomb art often featured fierce lions, coiled serpents, or mythical creatures guarding gateways. These were not just symbolic. The Egyptians believed these creatures had spiritual power and could act as supernatural sentries. Some tombs even included amulets shaped like animals, such as cats, crocodiles, or scarabs, believed to ward off harm. The Ka house and ongoing offerings. Tombs often featured small chapels or offering rooms, sometimes referred to as the Ka house. These spaces were designed for the living to bring offerings of bread, beer, meat, and incense to sustain the pharaoh's spirit. Priests or family members would continue these rituals for years, ensuring that the king's ka remained strong. Even when physical offerings were no longer brought, the Egyptians believed that the images of food and drink painted on the walls could magically transform into real sustenance for the spirit. The afterlife as a dangerous journey. The Egyptians believed that the afterlife was full of trials and dangers, much like an epic adventure. The soul of the deceased would encounter gates guarded by gods with strange, fearsome forms. Serpents, wakes of fire, and evil spirits threatened to destroy the unprepared. The spells inscribed in the tomb were like a manual for survival, giving the pharaoh the knowledge to answer divine questions, defeat enemies, and pass through gates unharmed. Modern fascination with tomb curses. The idea of tomb curses gained worldwide fame with the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, when several people connected with the excavation died under mysterious circumstances. The media sensationalized the story, claiming that the curse of the pharaoh had struck. While modern science attributes these deaths to natural causes, possibly mold or bacteria in the tomb, the myth of the curse endures, adding a layer of mystery to the already enigmatic tombs of Egypt. The power of memory and protection. Ultimately, the protection of the pharaoh's tomb was as much about memory as it was about magic. The Egyptians believed that to speak the name of the deceased was to keep their soul alive. To erase their name, known as damnatio memoria, was to destroy them in both the mortal and spiritual worlds. Thus, inscriptions, statues, and offering rituals all served to keep the memory of the king eternal, safeguarding his place among the gods. Part 7. Life around the tombs, priests, workers, and daily rituals. Although tombs were built for eternity and sealed after the burial, they were not simply abandoned. Royal tombs, especially those in the Valley of the Kings and Giza, became centers of activity for priests, workers, and even small communities dedicated to their care. To the ancient Egyptians, the afterlife of a pharaoh required ongoing attention, rituals, offerings, and maintenance to ensure that the king's spirit thrived among the gods. The tomb as a house of eternity. The Egyptians often referred to tombs as the porjet, meaning house of eternity. Just as a palace required servants and caretakers, so too did the tomb. Priests were employed to perform regular ceremonies, and the surrounding area often developed into a village or settlement of workers and guards. For royal tombs, this workforce could be extensive, including priests, tomb guardians, and specialized craftsmen tasked with repairing and refreshing the paintings or inscriptions when necessary. The priests. The priests were among the most important caretakers of the tomb. Their role was to ensure that the ka of the deceased king received food, drink, and prayers. Every day, these priests offered bread, beer, wine, fruit, and meat in small offering chapels located outside the main tomb. These rituals were performed at specific times of the day, accompanied by hymns and the burning of incense. The priests would also recite offering formulas, which were believed to transform the offerings into spiritual sustenance for the pharaoh in the afterlife. Festivals and commemorations. The tomb was also visited during special annual festivals, such as the Feast of the Valley in Thebes. During this festival, families visited the tombs of ancestors and royal spirits, bringing food and flowers. For the pharaoh, large processions were organized, with priests carrying statues of gods like Ammon and Osiris to bless the tombs and renew their spiritual energy. Such festivals served both a religious and social purpose. They kept the memory of the king alive, while also bringing the community together in a shared act of remembrance. The village of Deir el-Medina, one of the most fascinating examples of life around the royal tombs, is the village of Deir el-Medina, located on the west bank of the Nile near Thebes. This settlement housed the workers who built and decorated the tombs in the Valley of the Kings during the New Kingdom. The workers of Deir el-Medina were highly skilled artisans, painters, stone carvers, and scribes. They lived with their families in a well-organized village and were paid with rations of grain, beer, and vegetables. The community had its own temples, administrative offices, and even judicial courts to resolve disputes. Daily life of tomb workers. The construction of a royal tomb was a monumental task that could take decades to complete. Workers carved corridors and chambers deep into the cliffs, often by hand with copper or bronze tools. Once the architecture was finished, painters and artisans decorated the walls with scenes of the afterlife, gods, and sacred texts. Each artisan had a specialized role. Scribes outlined the hieroglyphs, sculptors carved reliefs into the walls. Painters filled in the images with vivid colors made from natural pigments. Despite the spiritual significance of their work, these workers faced harsh conditions. The desert heat was punishing, and the labor was physically exhausting. Yet they were highly respected for their craftsmanship. Guards and protection. Royal tombs were valuable targets for thieves, even in ancient times. To combat this, guards were stationed near the entrances and in the surrounding necropolis. These guards patrolled the area, especially at night, ensuring that no intruder disturbed the sacred grounds. In some cases, the tombs were equipped with hidden doors or false passages designed to mislead potential robbers. Guards also maintained strict control over who was allowed near the tomb. The ritual of replenishment. As time passed, some tombs required replenishment rituals to refresh their spiritual power. Priests would repaint faded inscriptions or perform new ceremonies to reactivate the protective spells carved into the walls. Offerings of incense, milk, and sacred oils were placed on altars to reawaken the energy of the tomb. These acts were not mere maintenance. They were believed to be essential for keeping the pharaoh alive in the afterlife. Tomb chapels for the living. Many royal tombs included small chapels where family members and priests could offer prayers. These chapels were often built near the entrance, accessible without disturbing the sealed burial chamber. The chapels contained statues of the king or images of him receiving offerings. Anyone who recited the king's name or left offerings was believed to feed the spirit, keeping it strong. The economy of the necropolis. The area around major necropolises like Giza or Thebes functioned almost like small cities. Markets sprang up to supply workers and priests with food, tools, and clothing. Craftsmen produced items for offerings, while farmers grew crops to feed the workforce. The economy of the tomb industry was a major driver of wealth and labor in ancient Egypt, involving not just artisans, but also farmers, traders, and temple officials. The spiritual presence of the pharaoh. To those who worked near the tombs, the pharaoh was not just a memory, but a living spiritual force. Priests often described feeling the presence of the king's ka during ceremonies. They believed the tomb was alive with divine energy, as if the walls themselves absorbed prayers and whispered them to the gods. Changing tomb practices over time. Over the centuries, the approach to tomb maintenance evolved. During the Old Kingdom, pyramid complexes served as both tombs and temples, with priests performing daily offerings in large mortuary temples attached to the pyramids. By the New Kingdom, when tombs were cut into the cliffs of the Valley of the Kings, the focus shifted to secluded burial sites with separate temples built closer to the Nile. Part 8. The evolution of tomb architecture. The tombs of the pharaohs are some of the most impressive architectural wonders ever built. But they did not emerge fully formed. Over thousands of years, Egyptian tomb architecture evolved dramatically, from simple desert graves to towering pyramids, and finally to the hidden rock-cut tombs of the New Kingdom. Each stage reflects not just advancements in engineering, but also changes in religion, politics, and security concerns. The earliest royal burials. The pre-dynastic period. Before Egypt became a unified kingdom, early rulers were buried in simple pits dug into the desert sand. These early graves were covered with wooden planks or reed mats, and the dead were buried with basic goods, pottery, tools, and beads. Over time, as rulers sought to demonstrate their power, these burials grew larger and more elaborate. The use of mud brick tombs began, and the dead were buried with more wealth and offerings, signaling the emergence of royal authority and belief in the afterlife. Mastabas, the first monumental tombs. By the early dynastic period, the kings of Egypt were buried in mastabas rectangular, flat-roof structures made of mud brick or stone. The mastaba served as both a tomb and a chapel for offerings. Below the mastaba, a shaft led to a burial chamber where the king's body and goods were placed. Above ground, priests and family members could visit to perform ceremonies and offer food for the ka. Mastabas were precursors to the step pyramids that would follow. The step pyramid of Djoser, the first monumental pyramid, was built during the reign of King Djoser in Saqqara. Designed by the legendary architect Imhotep, it began as a mastaba but was expanded into a 6-tiered step pyramid. This innovation marked a turning point in Egyptian architecture. It was made entirely of stone, a major leap from mud brick. It represented the king's ascent to the heavens, with each step symbolizing a stage of divine transformation. The complex included courtyards, temples, and ceremonial structures, creating a sacred city for the afterlife. The Age of the Pyramids. The Old Kingdom. The Old Kingdom saw the construction of the most iconic Egyptian tombs, the True Pyramids. The greatest of these were built at Giza, including the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which stands over 146 meters tall and was originally covered in gleaming white limestone. These pyramids were both tombs and cosmic symbols. Their shape represented the rays of the sun, allowing the pharaoh to ascend to the sky as a god. The alignment of the pyramids with celestial bodies reflected Egypt's fascination with the stars and the afterlife. The pyramid complexes at Giza included mortuary temples, causeways, and subsidiary pyramids for queens, as well as vast cemeteries for nobles and workers. Security concerns and the decline of pyramids. Despite their grandeur, pyramids were impossible to hide. Their treasures attracted grave robbers, even in ancient times. By the end of the Old Kingdom, tomb security became a pressing issue. In later periods, pharaohs began to abandon pyramid building in favor of less conspicuous tombs, focusing instead on hidden underground chambers and rock-cut tombs that were easier to conceal from looters. Middle Kingdom tombs. During the Middle Kingdom, tomb architecture shifted toward more modest pyramids combined with subterranean chambers. Many of these structures, however, were constructed from mud brick and have not survived well. The focus of religious architecture moved toward building large mortuary temples, which acted as centers of worship for the deceased king. The tomb itself became less of a monumental display and more of a secret burial site. Rock-cut tombs of the New Kingdom. By the New Kingdom, pharaohs adopted a new strategy to protect their remains. They built hidden tombs in the Valley of the Kings, west of Thebes. These tombs were carved deep into the limestone cliffs and had narrow, winding corridors leading to the burial chamber. The Valley of the Kings included famous tombs such as Kivi 62, filled with nearly untouched treasures. The vast tomb of Seti I, decorated with vivid, colorful scenes of the afterlife. Ramesses VI's tomb, known for its astronomical ceiling, showing the journey of the sun and stars. Unlike pyramids, these tombs were almost invisible from a distance, designed to keep the king's burial place secret. The layout of New Kingdom tombs. A typical New Kingdom royal tomb included a long descending corridor symbolizing the journey to the underworld, side chambers for storing goods, treasures, and offerings, a large burial chamber, often with a vaulted ceiling painted to represent the night sky, sacred texts such as the Book of Gates or Amduat, covering the walls to guide the king's soul. The tomb's architecture and decoration were carefully planned to act as a spiritual machine. Every element served to protect and empower the king. The Valley of the Queens and Nobles. Pharaohs were not the only ones to have elaborate tombs. The Valley of the Queens housed the tombs of royal consorts, such as the beautifully decorated tomb of Queen Nefertari, wife of Ramesses II. Wealthy officials and nobles were buried in tombs carved into the hillsides of Thebes, often featuring scenes of their daily lives, farming, fishing, or banquets, reflecting their hopes for a joyful afterlife. Tomb architecture as a reflection of belief. The evolution of Egyptian tombs mirrors the evolution of their religious worldview. Pyramids emphasize the king's divine connection to the sun and sky. Rock-cut tombs emphasize secrecy and protection, focusing on the pharaoh's journey through the dangerous underworld. Yet, across all periods, one belief remained constant: the tomb was the key to eternal life, a sacred space where magic, architecture, and art combined to ensure the king's rebirth. Modern discoveries and tomb design insights. Modern archaeology has revealed that tomb designs were not just religious, but also highly symbolic maps of the cosmos. The alignment of corridors, the placement of chambers, and even the colors used in decoration reflected the Egyptians' view of the universe as an ordered, divine creation. The discovery of unfinished tombs, such as those in the Valley of the Kings, offers a rare glimpse into the work of ancient builders, showing tool marks, plaster guides, and pigments left behind by artisans. Part 9. Rediscovering the Tombs, Archaeology and the Modern Era. For centuries, the tombs of Egypt's pharaohs lay hidden beneath desert sands and rocky cliffs, their secrets shrouded in mystery. While many were looted in antiquity, others remained sealed and forgotten. The rediscovery of these tombs in modern times, through exploration, archaeology, and sheer determination, has offered us extraordinary glimpses into the world of ancient Egypt. The story of this rediscovery is as dramatic as the history of the tombs themselves. The first tomb raiders and ancient looting. Tomb robbery is not a modern phenomenon. In fact, many royal tombs were plundered soon after the pharaoh's burial. Even with false passages, curses, and guards, the wealth within was simply too tempting. Ancient papyri, such as the Abbot Papyrus, record trials of tomb robbers during the New Kingdom, describing how thieves broke into royal tombs to steal gold and precious stones. By the time the Greeks and Romans arrived in Egypt, many of the tombs in places like Giza and Thebes had already been stripped of their treasures. Roman travelers often marveled at the ruins, but had little understanding of their original purpose. The age of European exploration, during the 18th and 19th centuries, European travelers and adventurers rediscovered the monumental remains of ancient Egypt. Figures like Giovanni Battista Belzoni, a former circus strongman turned explorer, played a key role in unearthing tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Belzoni's methods were crude by modern standards. He often used brute force and explosives to enter sealed chambers, but his discoveries captured Europe's imagination. His 1817 discovery of the tomb of Seti I revealed stunningly preserved wall paintings and sparked a wave of interest in ancient Egyptian art. Napoleon's expedition and the Rosetta Stone in 1798. Napoleon Bonaparte's expedition to Egypt included a team of scholars and artists who carefully documented the ancient ruins. This mission led to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, which provided the key to deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphs. The ability to read hieroglyphs transformed our understanding of tombs, allowing archaeologists to interpret the religious texts and spells that decorated the walls. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. The most famous discovery of all came in 1922, when Howard Carter, funded by Lord Carnarvon, uncovered the tomb of King Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings. Unlike most tombs, Tutankhamun's had remained almost completely intact for over 3,000 years. When Carter peered into the tomb for the first time, he famously said, "Yes, wonderful things." The treasures inside golden chariots, jeweled daggers, statues, and the now iconic golden death mask stunned the world. The discovery marked a turning point in archaeology and ignited a global fascination with ancient Egypt. The curse of the pharaoh. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb also gave rise to the enduring myth of the curse of the pharaoh. Several members of Carter's team, including Lord Carnarvon, died under unusual circumstances, leading newspapers to suggest that the tomb's curse had struck. While modern science attributes these deaths to natural causes, the story of the curse only heightened public intrigue and contributed to Egypt's mysterious allure. Modern archaeological techniques. Today, archaeology in Egypt is far more advanced and respectful than in Carter's time. Modern archaeologists use ground-penetrating radar, 3D mapping, and infrared scanning to detect hidden chambers without damaging the structures. Recent projects, such as the Scan Pyramids mission, have revealed voids and previously unknown corridors inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Similar techniques are being applied in the Valley of the Kings, where researchers believe undiscovered tombs, possibly even that of Queen Nefertiti, still lie hidden. The tombs of nobles and commoners. While much attention has focused on royal tombs, Modern excavations have also uncovered the burial sites of nobles, artisans, and workers. These smaller tombs provide invaluable insight into the daily life of ancient Egyptians, showing scenes of farming, weaving, fishing, and celebrations. The tombs at Deir el-Medina, the village of the tomb builders, are particularly rich in detail. Here, artisans painted vivid murals of their families, gods, and festivals images that contrast with the formal and divine scenes found in royal tombs. Tomb preservation challenges. Preserving tombs is a significant challenge for modern Egyptologists. Ancient murals and carvings are highly sensitive to humidity, temperature changes, and human contact. Tourists breathing inside tombs can cause damage over time, as moisture and carbon dioxide degrade the pigments. To address this, Egypt has created replica tombs to allow visitors to experience the beauty of the tombs without harming the originals. The continuing search for lost tombs, many royal tombs remain undiscovered. Archaeologists continue to search for the tombs of legendary figures such as Cleopatra VII, Alexander the Great, and unlocated pharaohs of the 18th and 19th dynasties. The recent discovery of new burial shafts in Saqqara, containing hundreds of mummies, shows that Egypt's desert sands still hold countless secrets. The impact of rediscovery. The rediscovery of Egypt's tombs has not only expanded our historical knowledge, but also transformed global culture. Egyptian art and symbolism have inspired architecture, fashion, and literature worldwide. From Hollywood films like The Mummy to scholarly studies of hieroglyphs, the allure of the pharaohs continues to captivate modern minds. Tombs as time capsules. Each tomb is like a time capsule, preserving not just the remains of a king, but also the beliefs, technology, and artistry of an entire civilization. Through their exploration, we can trace the evolution of medicine, engineering, and religious thought in ways that few other ancient cultures allow. Part X Legacy of the Pharaohs, Spiritual Meaning and Modern Inspiration. The tombs of Egypt's pharaohs are not just relics of the past. They are living reminders of humanity's eternal quest for meaning, immortality, and connection with the divine. Thousands of years after their construction, these tombs continue to fascinate and inspire. They stand as a testament to the power of memory, art, and belief, shaping not only the ancient world, but also modern science, culture, and philosophy. The spiritual legacy of the tombs to the ancient Egyptians. The tomb was more than a final resting place, it was a portal to eternity. Every wall, statue, and inscription was carefully designed to help the pharaoh navigate the afterlife and achieve immortality. The spiritual vision resonates even today. The tombs remind us of the universal human desire to transcend death, to leave behind something enduring that speaks to future generations. The very act of creating a tomb filled with stories, prayers, and symbols was an assertion that life continues beyond the grave. The tombs as sacred spaces, modern visitors often describe feeling a sense of awe upon entering a pharaoh's tomb. The atmosphere is heavy with history and reverence, as though the walls still echo with ancient chants. Archaeologists have noted that the design of tombs, especially in the Valley of the Kings, was meant to replicate the cosmos. The burial chamber represented the womb of the goddess Nut, the sky goddess, where the king was reborn as a divine being. The stars painted on the ceilings were not decorative, they were a map of the heavens, guiding the soul to the realm of the gods. The influence on modern science and architecture. The precision of Egyptian tomb builders continues to astonish engineers and scientists. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, for instance, is aligned with true north to a degree of accuracy that rivals modern technology. The study of tomb construction has influenced architecture, inspiring modern monuments and memorials. Engineering, providing insight into ancient tools, levers, and ramps. Astronomy, as researchers examine how the Egyptians used celestial alignments to design sacred structures. Even today, engineers look to the methods of ancient Egypt for lessons in durability and design. The tombs in modern culture, the allure of the pharaohs is deeply embedded in modern culture. Movies, books, and video games often draw on the imagery of tombs, pyramids, and mummies. From the early films of the 1920s to modern blockbusters, the theme of uncovering the secrets of the tomb remains irresistible. This fascination speaks to our collective curiosity. What happens after death? What secrets have been lost to time? The tombs of the pharaohs give these questions a tangible form. The ethical side of tomb excavations. Modern archaeology has also raised important ethical questions about the treatment of ancient remains. In the past, mummies and treasures were often removed from their tombs and displayed in museums, sometimes with little respect for their cultural or spiritual significance. Today, there is a growing effort to honor the dead while studying them. Many artifacts are being returned to Egypt, and researchers collaborate with Egyptian scholars to ensure that the tombs and their contents are preserved for future generations. Tourism and preservation. The tombs of the pharaohs, particularly those in Giza and Luxor, attract millions of visitors every year. Tourism provides vital funding for archaeological projects and preservation efforts, but it also poses risks. The constant flow of visitors can damage fragile paintings and structures. To protect the tombs, Egypt has invested in replica tombs and advanced conservation techniques. For example, the replica of Tutankhamun's burial chamber allows tourists to experience the wonder of the tomb without harming the original. The ongoing search for knowledge. Despite centuries of study, the tombs of Egypt still hold countless mysteries. Questions remain about the exact methods used to build the pyramids, the meaning of certain hieroglyphic texts, and the location of undiscovered tombs. Every excavation and discovery adds new pieces to the puzzle. The work of archaeologists, historians, and scientists is a testament to humanity's enduring quest for knowledge, echoing the ancient Egyptians' own desire to understand the universe. Lessons from the pharaohs. The tombs teach us that legacy matters. The pharaohs built their tombs not just to secure their own afterlife, but to project their memory into the future. Today, thousands of years later, their names, Khufu, Ramesses, Tutankhamun, are still spoken, their monuments still admired. The artistry of the tombs reminds us of the power of storytelling. Every wall painting is a story of battles fought, offerings made, gods worshipped, and journeys undertaken. These stories, preserved in stone, connect us to the lives of people who lived long before us. The modern symbol of eternity. In many ways, the tombs of the pharaohs have become symbols of eternity themselves. They endure through wars, weather, and time, standing as monuments to human creativity and spiritual ambition. For modern Egyptians, these tombs are part of their cultural identity and heritage, a link to one of the world's greatest civilizations. For the world at large, they serve as reminders of what humanity can achieve when art, science, and belief converge. The future of exploration, advances in technology suggest that we may soon uncover even more secrets hidden beneath Egypt's sands. Non-invasive scanning, satellite imagery, and DNA analysis are providing new insights into the lives of the pharaohs and their people. It is possible that undiscovered tombs still lie beneath the Valley of the Kings, waiting to reveal new treasures and texts that will deepen our understanding of ancient Egypt. The enduring mystery, ultimately, the tombs of the pharaohs remain both answers and questions. They answer how the ancient Egyptians viewed life, death, and eternity, but they also raise questions about the limits of human ambition, the meaning of immortality, and the stories we choose to leave behind. A journey through time, our journey through the tombs of the pharaohs, has taken us from their construction and decoration to their rediscovery and modern significance. In every stone, every hieroglyph, and every preserved artifact, We see the echoes of a civilization that sought to master both life and death. The tombs stand as a reminder that, though time moves on, the human desire to leave a mark on the world, to create something lasting, remains eternal. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe for more videos. Sweet dream.